Here we go. All right. So as you can see, we have certain learning outcomes, and these points, um, which I already sent to you earlier, so that you can have an impression about or have an idea about what we are going to discuss today. So hopefully we can cover this today before we run out of time. Okay, so any language requires two elements to fulfill one's need to communicate effectively. And if I give you the opportunity to participate, please, what would you think these two elements are? Yes, please. What do you think these two elements that everybody needs to communicate effectively in language? Yes, please. What do you think they are? Yes? Yes, what are these elements? Please use your mics, please, so that we save time.
Maybe one of them is the structure.
Structure, which comes under grammar. Okay, that's fine. What is the other thing? We use
Words.
grammar to words, which we refer to as lexicon or vocabulary. That's great. So what are they? So the first element is vocabulary, which is the language's stock of words or combination of symbols, signs, or letters. Yet words by themselves cannot constitute language, right? So if I say, for example, Khalid ate crocodile or whatever, we cannot determine who ate whom, right? Unless we have a grammar and we have a subject which comes before the verb, and then we have the object which comes after the verb. So imagine a person possessing all the words of a language, but he possesses no method of putting them together to make sense. It would be like trying to build a solid wall with tennis balls. What is needed is some cement or glue to stick them together to create a structure that others will recognize. The glue is a system of a grammar, or as one of the participants said, structure, grammar, syntax, which is the second component of language in addition to vocabulary. So as you see, he has some glue, using it to cement the bricks. So these bricks represent vocabulary or words or lexical items, and this glue represents grammar. Okay? Any major dictionary of the English language has over 100,000 head words, or what we call sometimes entries. And the most comprehensive of them, or of all of them, is the Oxford English Dictionary, which defines a total of over 6,000 words. With its 20 volumes, this lexical hopper occupies a great deal of shelf space, but fortunately is now available in electronic form. The third edition, now in progress and to be completed in another 20 or so years, will be an Oxford English Dictionary, which is so massive as perhaps only to be amendable to use online. Yet, while all these words exist in the dictionary, no native English speaker knows them all. And this perhaps takes us to Noam Chomsky's concepts of competence and performance, which he referred, or which he coined in his 1957 book titled Syntactic Structures. The average native speaker probably uses no more words than a speaker of any other major language. So the words we use in Arabic as our mother tongue are almost or more or less the same number of words used by a native speaker of English. So as you see, this is the 20-volume set of the dictionary of Oxford. And I still remember that Webster's Third New International Dictionary listed 650,000 words, and the revised Oxford English Dictionary listed 615,000 words. Although about 20 or 200,000 English words are in common use, much more are not used. And this takes us to a very important concept, which is we know that we have active words and we have passive words. All of us know active sentences and passive sentences, but here, active words are the words which are used actually by a person, and passive words are the words which are not used by a person, yet that person can understand them when they occur in certain sentences. Okay? So it is very important also to keep in mind that we can here mention, for example, that Shakespeare used 17,677 words. This is important for your general knowledge. Shakespeare used, this is the number of the exact number of words that he used in all his writings, the 37 plays and the 154 sonnets. Okay, now what is interesting here is that 1/10 of this number, okay, never used before. So 1/10 of this number wasn't used before, or he was the person who first coined these words. Some of these words are like leapfrog or castigate. I mean to tell someone off. Okay, يوبخ or يؤنب someone. Okay. So if we continue, parts of speech. Now below is a little verse widely used to teach young children the part of speech during the later part of the 19th century. So this is very interesting. I'll give you 2 minutes to have a look at it. Okay. So as you see, it is a short verse where you can find how parts of speech were defined for young children so that it is easier for them to memorize and to understand. Okay. Now it's very important also to keep in mind that for millions of Victorian children, I mean during the age during which this verse was composed, this rhyme served as a gentle introduction to the terrors of parsing. You know parsing? Yes? Parsing. Do you know parsing? Parsing is the art of analyzing the various roles played by words in a sentence. For example, whether this is a subject, verb, object, or to show the tense, all these fall under parsing, or it is a pedagogical exercise of labeling the grammatical element of sentences. Clear? Now, whether the terror of which was tried to be avoided during the Victorian age, whether that terror was real or imagined, no doubt that depended on how the subject was taught. Now, you might be surprised to know until 1985, grammar was the misguided fashion in many places where it used not to be taught at all. And as a result, millions of today's adults in the English-speaking world have a big black hole in their grammatical education. So we can call this verse as a mnemonic tool or aid, which is an assisting aid for memory. Okay, they call it mnemonic, and the M is silent. Okay, so it is very important to know this. And the fact that many words defy or resist a single classification does not make things easier. For example, the word round can play five different roles depending on how it is used in a sentence. So all or many words in English are versatile. For example, the word love could be used as a noun, verb, or an adjective, and the word fast could be used as a noun, verb, adjective, and as an adverb. And probably this verse might ring in our mind um, uh, what we call Alfiyat ibn Malik, which is the 1,000 line verse which was composed by Imam Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Malik, which started with كلامنا لفظ مفيد كاستقم واسم وفعل ثم حرف الكلم. So as you see, it is some, of course, Alfiyat ibn Malik is much more complex and much more detailed, but it just came to my mind. And if we continue, for example, we say بالجر والتنوين والندى وال ومسند للاسم تمييز قد حصل. So all these are markers that indicate if this is a noun in Arabic. بالجر والتنوين, you can use it in the dative case الجر, and you can use تنوين, and you can use it as nida, and you can add al, and you can use it as mubtada. Okay, so all these are markers for indicating that this is a noun in Arabic. Of course, not all words have this chameleon quality. You know this word, this is very interesting. Chameleon quality. So we know that chameleon means herba, and it is famous for changing its color to adjust to the place and where it is standing. And probably this is used in a very negative way. For example, if we say that this politician has a chameleon-like personality, it means he is not reliable, and you should not feel comfortable dealing with that person. Okay, so if we continue, okay, so we come now to, grammatical hierarchy, which is system made of different layers. Okay, so this is the verse, the short verse. Now we go to grammatical hierarchy, and it is very important to keep in mind that in grammatical hierarchy we are talking about, now I'm just reiterating what we talked about last time. So first we said that there are 4 grammatical units: words, phrases, clauses, and sentences, and they all constitute a hierarchy. The sentence, which is at the highest level in the hierarchy, and the word is at the lowest level within the hierarchy. Of course, maybe some of you might be skeptical about this statement, because they might say that we have also morphemes, which are still smaller unit within words, and this is correct. Now, a sentence consists of one or more clauses. So a simple sentence is a clause, and a clause consists of one or more phrases, and the phrase consists of one or more words. And we have a very useful illustrative example. A competent teacher taught brilliant students. It is a sentence made up of one clause. Okay, and this clause is divided into 3 phrases, and let's see what these phrases are. We have a competent teacher, which is noun phrase, which is realized as the subject, and we have taught, which is the verb phrase, and we have brilliant students, which serves as noun phrase. Okay, can you hear me? Do you have any question?
No, thank
Do
you.
you have any question? Okay, great. So the word verb phrase could be one word, as we have in this example, and it could be more than one word. Like, for example, I have been waiting for you. So have been waiting. All this is a verb phrase, and sometimes we call it verbal group because it is made up of more than one single verb. Okay? Um, a competent teacher taught brilliant students. It's interesting here to know that the phrases also consists of one or more words. Each phrase has a head, or what we call a principal word. So we say that the three heads are the noun, teacher. That's why we call it noun phrase, because the principal word of that phrase is the noun. And the verb, which is taught, which is here, it is the only word. And the noun, the another noun, which is students. So brilliant students is also another noun phrase whose head is the word students because it's the principal word in this phrase. Of course, we have adjective phrase, we have an adverbial phrase, and we have a prepositional phrase. But for the time being, we are talking about a specific sentence, and I'm trying to make things clear. Okay? Right. Now the three phrases are named after their heads. So it's the head word or the principal word which decides if we call it noun, verb, or adjective phrase. Each phrase can be assigned a grammatical function in the clause. So again, this is another kind of parsing function it takes on in the clause. So the noun phrase, I use the short form NP for noun phrase. A competent teacher here has been realized as a subject. The verb is taught, and the direct object is brilliant students, which is also another noun phrase. Clear? Now, a noun phrase can function as either the subject or direct object, or also it can come as an indirect object. However, a verb phrase can function only as the verb of the clause or sentence. So while more than one noun phrase can be used in the same sentence, we only have one verbal phrase which is used in one clause. Just as a sentence may consist of only one clause, so a phrase may consist of only one word. So, if we have a sentence like, for example, Ali studied hard. Ali here is a noun phrase which is made of just one word, right? But if we said, for example, the title of the book, the title of the book, for example, the title of the book is interesting. The title of the book, let's take it very. The title of the book, all this is subject, right? And it is also a noun phrase, right? But this noun phrase can be divided into the title, which is, here we have, of course, title is the head word. It is the principal word of the phrase. And of the book is considered to be a prepositional phrase. So we can have more than one phrase embedded within another one. Okay? Here? Okay. Okay, that is interesting. Okay, so sentence types, if we move to sentence types. Okay, before moving to sentence types, please, I'm just interested to say something very important here. We were talking about clauses, right? And we said that clauses are made of any subject plus finite verb. And finite verb is very important because without a finite verb, you cannot have a complete sentence. And finite verb is the verb which is or which carries the tense of the sentence. For example, I was watching TV. This is a sentence, right? Now, if I ask you about this is the subject and was watching is the verb phrase or verbal group, right? But the finite is only was. So if you have a verbal group or a verb phrase which is made up of more than one word, then it is only the first element which is considered to be a finite element or the finite verb. Okay, so this is the finite verb. And we call it finite because usually it changes and it has what we call person agreement or and subject verb agreement with the subject. So if we try to write the same sentence but we said he or let's say they, we would say they were watching. So as you see here, it is the finite verb which changed with the change of the subject, but watching remained as it is. So we say that watching is non-finite form. Okay? Here? Okay. Right. And it's important also to mention that non-finite forms are one of the following ones. To watch, okay, so it is infinitive. To plus verb 1 or ing participle as watching, as you saw here, watching or playing or whatever. Okay, and and we have the ed or the en form, which is the past participle. For example, I have heard. So heard here is a non-finite form. Okay, clear? So here we have to mention that we have person agreement, and some books call it concord. Like for example, especially with personal pronouns plus verbs to be. So I was, I am, he is. So as you see, this is called person agreement. This is person agreement. While when we talk about subject verb agreement, then we are talking about the relationship of the number between the subject and the verb. So we say he eats, but we say I eat, right? For example, fish. So we call this subject verb agreement or also concord. Clear? Now it is interesting also to know that in the past simple tense, we have no concord variation. Why is that? Because we say I ate fish and they ate fish, right? And also in past simple and past perfect, it's the same thing. I had eaten fish and they had eaten fish. So we say that past perfect and past simple both have no concord variation. Okay? Clear? So so it is good to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go back and continue. Now, sentences are classified as simple, compound, or complex sentences according to their internal clause composition. And some books actually refer to multiple sentences. They say multiple sentences as a term which subsume, which combine both compound and complex sentences. So a sentence consisting of one clause is a simple sentence. We talked about that a few minutes ago. Some examples: I went to Jazan last week. This is a simple sentence. And although it is very short, let's have a look here. My right honorable friend, the Secretary of State, met Health Authority Chairman on the 10th of July and more recently at a briefing seminar in Cardiff on the 19th of October. So both are simple sentences, by the way, because both are made up of a subject, verb, and an object. But what makes them look different is their length. So in the second one, if you want to analyze it, from my right until state, all this is considered to be a subject. Okay, all this is a subject. And this is the verb. And all this is considered to be, of course, Health Authority Chairman. All this, the three words are direct object. And everything else from on the 10th until October, okay, this is called what? What do we call this? What do we call this? Use your mics, please. Yes, what do we call this?
Complement.
Complement.
It is not complement. It is not complement. Complement is something necessary for the text. This is called adjunct. We call it adjunct. Okay? What do we call it? We call it adjunct. For example, let me give you a very quick example. I suddenly left the room. Okay? Now, suddenly, let's say suddenly the room on the 10th of January. Okay? And we can, of course, continue for using many words. Now, the word suddenly, and on the 10th of January, both are considered to be adjuncts. Of course, suddenly we can consider to be the adverb, and on the 10th of January, we can consider to be also an adverb of time, and suddenly can be considered to be also an adverb, but both are, or both come under what we call adjunct. And adjunct is something which is characterized by three different elements. Okay, it is first, it is optional. كيف تعرف إنه this is an adjunct? It is optional. In other words, you can take them from the sentence and the sentence is still meaningful. So you can say, I left the room, and the sentence is perfect in semantically speaking, right? So it is optional. Clear? And number two, it is not restricted in number. What does this mean? It means you can use a lot of different adverbs and different prepositional phrases with no strict or rigid rule to stop here. So you can say, I suddenly, happily, angrily, whatever you want, you can use that. So it is not restricted in number. And more importantly is that it is adjunct are considered to be mobile. What it means by mobile, what we mean by mobile is that you can change its position in the sentence. So you can say, suddenly I left the room. So we changed the position of suddenly from after the subject until the beginning. Or you can say, I left the room on the 10th of January suddenly. Or you can say, on the 10th of January, I left the room suddenly. So as you see, adjuncts are considered to be mobile structures in the sentences. Okay? Clear? Right. Okay. Any question? Any question? Okay. Now, regarding the subject-verb agreement, we have something called also notional agreement or concord. What is notional agreement? Actually, it is used with only group or what we call collective words. We use it with group or collective words, which are certain words which are used or which can be used in English as both singular or plural, depending on the meaning you want to convey. Like for example, government. Like like administration, like team. Okay, all these words are considered to be collective nouns or group nouns, and both we can say is or are. Both are fine. The government is or the government are. However, if you use a plural verb, then you are using the British style. But if you use singular verb, then you are imitating the American style. Okay, great. So we say the government are, for example, or the committee of, also committee is another word. The committee, for example, the British would say are dragging their feet about مثلا building the bridge مثلا مثال سريع. Okay, are dragging, while the Americans would say they or the committee is. Okay, so we call this usage, we call it notional concord or notional agreement. Okay, and also if you use the American style, okay, they call it grammatical concord. Is not notional, we call it grammatical concord. Here, okay? Okay. Now it is something also, we have something important to talk about. Sometimes we have what we call coordinated subjects. Coordinated subjects. What is coordinated subjects? It is when you have noun conjoined with another noun by using the word and. For example, Monday and Tuesday are very busy for me. This is called coordinated subject. This is called coordinated subject. Clear? So we call it coordinated subject. Why? Because we have one noun phrase, another noun phrase. Of course, both make one noun phrase because both constitute the subject, but because we have two nouns conjoined together by and, then we call it coordinated subject. It is always used as plural. It is always used as plural, right? Sometimes it is important. I don't know if you have come across this. Law and order is important in this election. النظام والقانون مهمان في هذه الانتخابات. لاحظوا معي law and order. Here we have a coordinated subject, yet we used singular verb, right? Well, this actually depends on how we look at these qualities or at these two separate nouns. Do we look at them as one thing or as separate issues? If we look at them as separate issues, okay, then we use are. If we look at them as one thing, then we use a singular verb. Okay? Is it clear now? Any question? Yes, any
Yes,
question?
doctor.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah, regarding definite verb, can we consider them auxiliaries or are they
Well,
different?
okay. Auxiliary is a very broad concept. We have primary auxiliaries, which include verbs to do, to be, and to have. And we have the modals. And I'm sure you know modals much more than I do. Shall, should, may, might, uh, uh, can, could, etc. Will, would. Okay, we're not going to list them all now. Anyway, so for primary auxiliaries, they can be used in two different ways. Either as auxiliaries to form different tenses, like for example, she was washing or she was doing the dishes, for example. Here, was is used as an auxiliary verb, right? But if we said she was hardworking, here, here was has been used to form past continuous, right? But here it is past simple. Is that correct? Right? This is past simple. So was here and was here are used differently. And here in both or in the first sentence, we call this was, we call it operator. We call it operator. When it is used, we call it operator. But here we call it copular verb. Copular verb. We call it copular verb. And by copular verb, it means you cannot stop from using the following word. For example, you cannot say she was and you stop. You need a complement. So hardworking here is a complement. So you see the difference between complement and adjuncts. Complement are components in language which you cannot do without. You have to use them. Clear? So we call it complement. Okay, it is not object, because I know my students sometimes thought that this is a subject, or sorry, this is an object because it came just after the verb, and this is wrong. It is not an object, because if it is an object, then you can start with it to make a passive sentence voice, a passive voice sentence, right? But you cannot start with hardworking to make a passive sentence. So this is called a complement. And what type of complement? It is subject complement. Because hardworking refers back or anaphorically to she, which is the subject. So we call it subject complement. Clear? Look at this, for example. We elected him chairman. Look at this. What is chairman? What is it, chairman?
Adjunct,
Is it
maybe.
object? Sorry? Yes, what is it? Yes, what do you think?
Maybe a complement.
What type of complement?
Adjunct.
Subject complement.
Object.
Because it refers to the subject.
Exactly. So we call this object complement because it refers to him. Okay? It doesn't refer back to we, for example. So we call it object complement. And also, it is different, for example, from we narrated or we told the children story. This is different. Children here is an indirect object. While a story is the direct object. Okay, so we will come to that maybe in the next sessions, but not today. I'm just giving you a brief session or brief some brief information about this. Okay, clear? And usually, by the way, when you have two objects, and we call this verb the transitive verb, because it takes two objects. Okay, it is the same as we have in Arabic some words or some verbs which take two objects. For example, منحنا الله نعما كثيرة مثلا. منحنا طبعا الأوبجكت الأول هي نا في منحنا والمفعول به الثاني هو نعما. So we have two objects here. So it is the transitive verb. Okay, and usually انتبهوا معي, this is important. Usually the first or the indirect object is usually animate object. So it is something human. Usually it is human. And if you want to start with a story, we told a story to the children. Usually, in this case, the children here is considered to be object of a preposition. We call it object of preposition, and usually it is preceded by to or for. And we consider the object of preposition, we call it recipient of action. Here. Okay. Right. Do you want this file? Would you like this file when we finish?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Okay. So let's continue. I'm sorry for the digression and the elaboration. Okay. So as we mentioned, it is not the length of sentence which determines if it is simple, compound, or complex. A compound sentence, it is, or it consists of two or more clauses at the same grammatical level. So we have two or more clauses. In simple sentence, we just had one clause. Each of the clauses is a main clause, and typically each could be an independent sentence. And this is very, very important. What is meant by main clause? Actually, in English, clauses are of two types. They are either main. We have main clauses, and we have subordinate or dependent. الكتب بتسميها subclause. All these are used in English grammar. Main clauses are the clauses which can stand alone without distorting the meaning. For example, if you study hard, you will pass the exam. Okay? If we said, if you study hard and we stopped, do you think that this is meaningful, or do you think that this is complete thought conveyed? If we said, if you study hard and we stopped, do you think that this is useful, this is meaningful?
No, of course.
Of course, no. So we call this subordinate or dependent or subclause. While if you said you will pass the exam and you stop, then this is a complete sentence. So this is a main clause. Okay, main or independent clause. You see the difference? Okay. So in compound sentences, we have two main clauses, and these two clauses are joined together by something we call coordinating conjunction. For example, I will cook the fish and you will buy the bread. Okay, so here we have two main clauses. This is main clause number one, and this is main clause number two, right? And this is what we call coordinating conjunction. And it is used to conjoin the sentences together, okay? And some books call it marker of linkage. They call it marker of linkage, okay? Some books also call it coordinators. Okay, clear? Right. Okay, so if we continue, actually we look at this sentence, for example. It has only been a week and I feel lonesome without you. So the first one is main clause and we have another main clause. Both are conjoined or both are joined together by what we call coordinating conjunction. Of course, we can have but and we can have also or as coordinating conjunctions. Clear? If we move on to complex sentences, in complex sentences, we have at least one subordinated clause as one of its constituents. And actually, it's the determining factor that makes a sentence complex is that you have one subordinated clause. So when she heard the explosion, so this is the subordinated clause, she phoned the police. So this is subordinated clause introduced by a subordinating conjunction. So the word when, okay, is called subordinating conjunction. Of course, we have many different subordinating conjunctions. Clear? Okay. And this clause, which starts with when, can be called adverbial clause. It can be called adverbial clause. Clear? And notice with me, you can start, of course, with the main clause. We have no problem at all. The only difference is that you are not going to be using the comma. We use the comma only after the subordinated clause when you start with the subordinated clause. So you can say also, she phoned the police when she heard the explosion without a comma. Clear? Okay, that's interesting. So regarding subordinating conjunctions, we have a lot. And actually, we have simple ones. Simple. Subordinating conjunctions. Okay, and when we say simple, it means we use just one word, like before, after, if, okay, when, while, etc. And we have something else which is called compound subordinated conjunction. Okay, and some of these are in order that, okay, or so that, except that, etc. Clear? Of course, here we have also unless, because, etc. Clear? Okay. Right. Okay, so let's continue. Please, if you have any questions, you can just take notes of your questions and then we will get back to them later. We can distinguish 4 types of sentences with respect to their major uses in communication. So it depends on the communicative function that you want to convey. We have 4 different functions. Okay. For example, we have declarative sentences for statements, and just one example is they studied hard, and actually it is the most common type, and it's the basic type for all other sentences in English. It's the declarative sentences, and some books can call it just declaratives. Number two, interrogative sentences, which is used for questions. Did they study hard? And they can be, we have two types, yes, no questions and WH questions. Did you meet the manager? Or what time did you meet the manager? So we have two different types of questions under interrogative sentences. And here, if you notice with me, we have different word order from declaratives. So if you just try to compare they studied hard with did you meet the manager, or what time did you meet the manager, we have the auxiliary verb is placed before the subject you, right? Here, did you, it comes before, while here the subject comes before the verb. So this is called subject operator inversion. For the lady who asked me a few minutes ago about using verb to be or verb to do or verb to have, as you see here, it is called operator. Okay, it is subject verb inversion. So you start first with the operator and come with the subject. Clear? Then we have the third type of sentences called imperatives, which is used for directives or for commands or requests. Study hard, for example. Leave the room. Of course, don't do unless we finish. Number four, exclamatives, which is used for exclamations. For example, how hard they studied. Okay, how hard they studied. Okay, so imperative sentences, we have second person imperatives, which is the typical and by far the most frequent imperatives, and generally do not have a subject but you, which is implied as subject. For example, we say, look at the beautiful scenery here. We don't use you. Okay, it is recoverably understood as we have here you, but it is not written or mentioned. So you can be added either for contrast or for some kind of emphasis, like for example in treaty or warning. For example, if I'm teaching you face to face and one of you got his attention distracted, I would be saying you, pointing my finger at him, you pay attention to what I'm saying. So in this case, I use you to show contrast and to add some emphasis, to place some emphasis on that person meant. For example, you tell me, not anybody else, you. Okay? Do is placed before the imperative verb or auxiliary to make it less abrupt and more persuasive. For example, do bear in mind that unit values, etc. So we can use do to add more emphasis and to add more forces of persuasion. Do come in. Do let's have another game. Okay? Now here I think it's also important. We know that let's is used here, for example, let's play football, right? If you want to make it in the negative, you want to make it negative, actually we have two ways. British English, in British English they say don't let's play. Okay, in American English they say let's do not play. Although both would be using let's not play. So it is important to keep these in mind. Okay? And if somebody want to talk about, you know that we have, I mean, in terms of pronouns, we have first person singular pronoun and we have first person plural. So if you want to talk about first person singular, we would say, let me introduce you to this topic, for example. But if I want to talk about first person plural, I would say, let us or let's talk about this. Okay, clear? And also we have third person command. This is important, although it is very rare. Third person. And when we say third person, we are talking about she or he or it, of course. Here. So we can say, now someone open the door. Okay, we use this to talk about, it means let somebody or let somebody go and open the door. Clear? طيب. Any questions? Any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we go to exclamatives, which is the fourth type. It begins with what or how, and what introduces noun phrases, while or otherwise you can use how. So both are used. Compare exclamatives and interrogative sentences. What strong words you used? يا لها من كلمات قوية لتلك التي استخدمتها. You see, exclamatives نستخدمها في الجمل التعجبية. Okay, first we have the same word order of declarative sentences, subject and verb, and we have exclamation mark. While in interrogative sentences, you have what we call subject operator inversion, and you start with the auxiliary verb, and then you have the subject, and then you have the main verb, and we have a question mark. Look at here, for example, how clever he is. يا له من ذكي ما أذكاه. Okay, so here we have same word order as declaratives. We have subject, and then we have verb, and we have exclamation mark. While if it is interrogative sentence, we say how clever is he. Okay, ما مدى ذكاؤه, كم يبلغ ذكاؤه. Clear? So we have big difference in structure between interrogative sentences and exclamative sentences. Right. Okay. Now we can start now with nouns. We will start with nouns as the first part of speech. Okay. Can I have just 2 minutes? I remembered something important regarding that one. Okay. All right. Okay. Notice with me, please. We said that how clever he is, right? You can express the same idea with only how clever. That would be enough. You don't need to use he is unless you want to specify a certain person. But in terms of exclamation, it is okay and it is used. Okay? So we say that how clever is called exclamative phrase. It is not clause or sentence because we don't have he is. Clear? So this is phrase, while the first one is sentence. Here, for example, we can say how stupid, يا له من أحمق, or what a shame, يا له من عار. مثلا, all these are phrases, they are not sentences. Okay? Clear? Okay. Sometimes we need to express a longer idea. For example, we would be saying how wonderful Ali, or how wonderful that Ali, for example, has passed the exam. كم كان علي مذهلا في اجتياز الاختبار. You see, we have that clause. we have that clause. And by the way, sentences which have that in the middle are considered to be complex sentences because that clause is considered to be a subordinate sentence. Okay? Clear? Okay. في عنا شيء مهم here which is called rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions. And these questions, they have the same form. They have the form of a question, but pay attention. They have the communicative function of a statement. Okay? This looks very interesting. What do we mean by this? Actually, this is used actually by speakers like politicians or by people who would like to give you persuasive force about their speech. So if the rhetorical question is positive, then the implied statement is negative, and vice versa. What is meant by this? It means the implied statement is the mental answer that the speaker intends the hearer to infer from the rhetorical question. And as we said, it is common in persuasive decisions or in persuasive discourse and in politicians' speeches. Okay? For example, and by the way, most of the time they take the form of yes/no question. For example, don't I waffle on? Don't I waffle on? So because this is positive, then the implied answer or the expected answer by my audience is a negative one. For example, don't I waffle on يعني معناها هل رغيت في كلامي؟ هل ثرثرت؟ ألم أثرثر؟ الإجابة المتوقعة منكم no, you didn't waffle. So this is called rhetorical questions. Okay? Clear?
Yes.
Okay. For example, what difference does it make? Here it took the form of WH question. What difference does it make? It means it made no difference. Okay? So if I say, did I or was I or did I absent from or were I absent last week? I wasn't absent. Okay, so these are called rhetorical questions. Clear? And as we mentioned, they are used by politicians. Okay, so nouns as one part of speech. Word classes have been established on the basis of 3 types of criteria: notional, morphological, and grammatical. Okay, now by notional, or sometimes we call it semantic, it means the criteria which involve generalizations about the meaning of words in a class. These criteria have been applied to English nouns and verbs only. So notional or semantic criteria have been used to establish the difference and to categorize nouns and verbs. For example, one common notional definition of noun is that they are names of persons, names of places or things. Although it looks satisfactory to some extent, it is still inadequate. Why? Because it's many words which we wish to place them as nouns. For example, yes, please. Any question? Okay, simply because grammarians believe that they behave in the same grammatical way. But what about, for example, abstract nouns, like for example, beauty, poverty, death, happiness? So or what about words used for like, for example, the word destruction, the word death, the word all. This is, of course, just to mention just a few. So this is what is called the notional criteria. If we move to the morphological criteria, here we refer to the form of words to which nouns, for example, belong. We know that we have inflectional forms of the same lexical item. For example, plurals of nouns. In English, we know that we have the S as plural marker, right? However, this is not adequate simply because we have some words which are pluralized by adding things which are different from the S of plurality, right? Also, we can have nouns by adding some suffixation or by adding what we call suffixes, which are inflections added to the end. Okay? Like, for example, now we will see some examples. Okay? And by grammatical here, or sometimes we call it syntactic criteria, it involves the grammatical function of the word in its relation to other words. For example, we know that nouns are used, and we mentioned that earlier, as subject, direct object, or indirect object. And they can be, by the way, introduced by a determiner, okay, as a pre-modifier, or by a post-modifier. Please let me just illustrate this. For example, this is a book which I bought last week. Now, this is the noun, right? Correct? This is a determiner. We call it, this is a determiner because it comes before the noun, and we call it pre-modifier. And which I bought, which is relative clause. This is the relative clause, or what we call in Arabic صلة الموصول. Okay, it is considered to be post modifier of the word book because it came after the word the book. Right? Clear? Of course. Okay. Any question up to this point? Yes. Any question up to this point? Yes, please.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. تسمحوا لي ارجع دقيقة بس. Just a minute. تذكرت شغلة. Just a minute, please. We were talking about adjunct, and we said that we have three different criteria for deciding that this is an adjunct, right? Clear? This is actually very similar to what we call in Arabic al-fudla, al-umda wal-fudla. سامعين فيها ولا لا؟ العمدة والفضلة. العمدة is the basic pillars of the Arabic sentence. الأركان الرئيسية في الجملة العربية اللي هي دائما بتكون عبارة عن المسند إليه والمسند. اوكي؟ وهو بيكون المبتدأ والخبر والفعل والفاعل، وكان واخواتها ترفع الاول تنصب الثاني، وان واخواتها تنصب الاول ترفع الثاني، الى اخره. كله بيسموه العمده. الفضله هو ما استطعت ان تتخلى عنه دون افساد المعنى. like for example التمييز. like for example الحال. مثلا جاء علي مسرعا. اوكي؟ عما نتحدث في هذه الجملة؟ عما نتحدث عن علي ولا عن جاء؟ نتحدث عن علي. الكلام كله عن علي. إذن هو المسند إليه، وجاء هو المسند، كلاهما عمدة، ومسرعا هي الفضلة with which you can complete the sentence without. It is something very similar to what we call it is like adjunct. مسرعا here or الفضلة is like adjunct. That's why it came to my mind now. Okay, so العمدة والمسند والمسند إليه are central components in English. They are central components. الفضلة مثل مسرعا بنسميه بالإنجليزي أحيانا peripheral components مثل ما حكينا or adjuncts. Okay, so adverbs or adjuncts are the classic example or instance of peripheral components. Okay, clear? And by the way, معلش تحملوني, adverb can be classified into two parts, either conjunct or disjunct or disjunct. In conjunct is used as connective link or word. Okay, and it has connective function, like for example, however, blah 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 blah. Okay, here by disjunct, it is used to mean it is comment on the content of the statement. Like for example, to my surprise, many of you have already got bored, and this is true, right? That's true, and this is also a rhetorical question. So, to my surprise is a disjunct. Okay, it has meaning about it. It is a comment on the whole statement which follows it. Clear? Right. Okay, so again, of course, we have other types of adverbs of manner, adverbs of time, of place, etc. Right. Okay. طيب. Can we stop for 10 minutes? Would you like to stop for 10 minutes? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so it is now. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot myself as usual, and this is one disadvantage